The morning sun rose over New Hanseong Colony like it had every day for the past 20 years. Taeho walked through the wheat fields, checking the crops that would feed thousands of people across 3 star systems. The golden grain swayed in the artificial breeze created by the atmosphere processors. Everything looked perfect and peaceful. Taeho wiped sweat from his forehead and looked up at the clear blue sky. Ships came and went from the colony every week, bringing supplies and taking away food. Most were human traders, but sometimes alien vessels visited too. The colony welcomed everyone who came in peace. In the administrative building at the center of the settlement, Dong-min sat at his desk reviewing harvest reports. He had been the colony administrator for 5 years now. Before that, he had been many things, but he rarely talked about his past. The colonists knew him as a quiet man who made good decisions and kept them safe. Dong-min looked out his window at the busy streets. Children played in the parks while their parents worked. Markets sold fresh vegetables and handmade goods. Schools taught the next generation about farming, science, and trade. New Hansung was exactly what a peaceful human colony should be. 3 buildings away, Hye-jin worked in the Agricultural Research Center. She spent her days developing better crops and more efficient farming methods. Her work helped feed millions of people across human space. Everyone respected her knowledge and dedication to making life better. What none of the colonists knew was that Hye-jin did more than just study plants. Late at night, when everyone else slept, she sent coded messages to distant places. She watched the stars through special equipment hidden in her laboratory. She kept track of ships that passed through the system, especially the ones that did not land. Far beyond the peaceful farms of New Hanseong, the Vortak Empire was making plans. The empire controlled hundreds of worlds and billions of beings. Their fleets were massive and powerful. Their armies had never lost a war. They looked across the galaxy for new worlds to conquer and new peoples to rule. Supreme War Chief Kethmore stood in his command center, studying star maps. His officers pointed out human colonies scattered across the rim of known space. The reports from Vorthak scouts were encouraging. Humans seemed weak and unprepared for war. "Look at these settlements," Kethmore said to his advisors. "They have no orbital defenses, no military bases, no warships protecting them. These humans care only about farming and trading. They will be easy to defeat." Fleet Admiral Yextal nodded in agreement. "Our scouts report that human colonies have only basic security forces, a few guards with simple weapons. They spend their time growing food instead of building armies. We can take their worlds in days." The Vorthak had watched human colonies for months. They saw farmers working in fields. They saw traders coming and going with cargo ships. They saw families living normal, peaceful lives. Everything pointed to humans being a weak species that had spread too far without proper protection. What the Vorthak did not see were the hidden sensors watching their scout ships. They did not notice the coded messages being sent from every human colony. They did not understand that what looked like weakness might be something else entirely. Back on New Hansong, Taeho finished his work in the fields and walked home to his family. His wife Mi-young had dinner ready. Their 2 children, a boy and a girl, talked excitedly about their school projects. The family ate together and shared stories about their day. After dinner, Taeho and Mi-young sat on their porch watching the stars come out. Other families did the same thing all across the colony. It was a tradition that reminded them they were part of something bigger than just one world. "The stars are beautiful tonight," Mi-young said, holding Taeho's hand. "They are," he agreed. "Sometimes I wonder what other people are out there, looking up at the same stars." Neither of them knew that hostile eyes were indeed watching from those stars. Vorthak warships had entered the system's outer regions. Their commanders were making final preparations for attack. In his office, Dong-min received an urgent message on a communication device that looked like an ordinary data pad. The message was short but clear. "Unknown military vessels detected in system. Maintain normal activities. Be ready." Dong-min deleted the message and continued working on his regular reports. To anyone watching, he looked like a normal administrator doing normal work. But his mind was now focused on plans that had been made long ago, plans that he hoped would never be needed. Hye-jin also received the warning. She quietly activated certain systems in her laboratory and sent her own coded message to distant receivers. Then she returned to her plant research as if nothing had changed. The next morning started like any other. Taeho went to his fields. Children went to school. Traders landed at the spaceport with goods from other worlds. The colony looked as peaceful and defenseless as ever. At noon, the sky suddenly filled with massive alien ships. The Vorthak fleet had arrived in full force. Dozens of warships took positions above the colony. Their weapons pointed down at the helpless settlement below. The attack began without warning. Energy beams struck the outer farms, destroying buildings and crops. Explosions shook the ground as the aliens targeted anything that looked important. People screamed and ran for shelter, but there was nowhere to hide from orbital bombardment. Taeho was in his fields when the first shots fell. He saw his neighbor's farm explode in a ball of fire. He ran toward his home, but more explosions blocked his path. All around him, the peaceful world he knew was turning into a nightmare. Alien dropships landed in the streets, releasing Vorthak soldiers. These beings were larger than humans, with thick armor and powerful weapons. They moved through the colony, capturing anyone they found. They showed no mercy to anyone, not even children. From his office window, Dongmin watched his people suffer. His hands moved to a hidden panel in his desk. Inside was a device that had never been used, a quantum beacon connected to systems far away. His finger hovered over the activation switch. The choice was simple but terrible. Use the beacon and call for help that might come too late, or watch his colony fall without resistance. Dongmin pressed the switch. A signal raced through space faster than light itself, carrying a message that had not been sent in over 200 years. The message was short: colony under attack. Civilians targeted. Request immediate Reaper protocol authorization. The beacon signal reached its destination in seconds. In a place very far from New Hansong, systems that had been sleeping for centuries suddenly came alive. The peaceful farmers of New Hanseong had just awakened something that the Vorthak Empire was not prepared to face. 3 days had passed since the Vorthak fleet destroyed the outer settlements of New Hanseong. The aliens had taken control of the colony's main areas and captured hundreds of humans. They set up camps to hold their prisoners and began searching for valuable resources to steal. Taeho sat in one of these camps, his hands tied behind his back. Around him, other colonists waited in fear. Many were injured from the attack. Children cried for their parents. The elderly struggled to stay strong. The Vorthak guards showed no kindness to anyone. "Why did they attack us?" whispered an old woman sitting next to Taeho. "We never hurt anyone. We only wanted to farm and live in peace." Taeho had no answer. The attack made no sense to him. New Hanzhong had always welcomed visitors. They traded fairly with everyone. They had never threatened anyone or built weapons. Yet the aliens had come anyway, bringing death and destruction. In the colony's administrative building, Fleet Admiral Yextal studied maps of human space. The conquest of New Hanzhong had been easier than expected. His forces had met almost no resistance. A few security guards with basic weapons had tried to fight back, but they were quickly defeated. "These humans are even weaker than our scouts reported," Yextal told his officers. "We should attack more of their colonies immediately. We can take their entire territory in a few months." The Vorthak admiral did not know that his victory was being watched by hidden sensors throughout the colony. Every move his forces made was being recorded and transmitted to distant receivers. The apparent weakness of human defenses was noted and analyzed by minds that understood warfare far better than he did. High above the planet, Vorthak sensor operators sat at their stations monitoring space around the colony. Their job was to watch for any human ships that might try to rescue the colonists. So far they had seen nothing except normal trade traffic in the distance. Then something strange appeared on their screens. The readings showed ships approaching, but they were unlike anything in the Vorthak military database. The vessels were large, angular, and moving in perfect formation. Their energy signatures were completely unknown. "Admiral," called one of the sensor operators, "we have unknown contacts approaching the system. The ships do not match any known human designs." Yextal looked at the sensor data with growing confusion. The approaching vessels were clearly artificial, but they did not look like the simple cargo ships and colony transports that humans usually used. "These ships looked dangerous. How many vessels?" asked the admiral. 37 ships detected so far, sir. They are maintaining communication silence and approaching at high speed." Yextal felt the first hint of worry. Something was not right about this situation. But his fleet was strong, and these mystery ships were heavily outnumbered. Whatever was coming, the Vorthak Empire could handle it. The lead ship of the approaching human fleet was the dreadnought Silent Fury, commanded by Captain Ji Wan. She stood on her bridge, watching the tactical displays that showed the Vorthak positions. Her crew worked quietly at their stations, preparing weapons and systems that had not been used in active combat for decades. Enemy fleet composition confirmed, reported her tactical officer. 312 Vorthak warships in standard battle formation. Orbital bombardment platforms active. Ground forces deployed across the colony. Captain Jiwan nodded calmly. The numbers meant nothing to her. She had fought much larger fleets with much smaller forces. What mattered was not how many ships the enemy had, but how well they understood the nature of warfare. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Execute Pacification Protocol 7. No survivors among military targets. Civilian safety is priority 1. Her communications officer sent coded signals to the other ships in the fleet. Across 37 vessels, crews began final preparations for battle. Weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space itself charged to full power. Marines checked equipment that would allow them to fight in any environment. Everyone knew their job and did it with deadly efficiency. On New Hanseong, Hyejin had avoided capture by hiding in her laboratory's secret areas. She watched through hidden cameras as Vorthak soldiers searched the research center above her. They found only normal agricultural equipment and plant samples. They had no idea that the real purpose of the facility was hidden beneath their feet. From her hiding place, Hyejin sent a final message to the approaching fleet. Colony population scattered. Approximately 800 civilians in enemy camps. Vorthak forces concentrated in main settlement. Orbital defense is minimal. She was not just an agricultural engineer. For 15 years, Hyejin had been a deep space intelligence operative, one of hundreds placed in colonies throughout human space. Her job was to watch for threats and gather information about potential enemies. The Vorthak had been under human observation for much longer than they realized. The human fleet reached the edge of the system and began their attack without any warning or demands for surrender. Admiral Seung-woo, commanding the entire operation from his flagship Eternal Vigilance, gave the order that would change everything. All ships commence pacification protocols. Show them what happens when you threaten human civilians. The first phase of the attack lasted exactly 17 minutes. Human ships appeared throughout the Vorthak formation, as if they had materialized from nothing. Their weapons fired once, twice, 3 times. Each shot destroyed multiple enemy vessels with power that the Vorthak had never seen before. Yextal watched in horror as his fleet disappeared around him. Ships that had taken years to build turned into expanding clouds of gas and metal. His weapons officers fired back desperately, but their shots seemed to pass through the human vessels without causing any damage. "How are they doing this?" screamed one of his tactical officers. "Our sensors show direct hits, but their ships are not taking damage." The admiral had no answer. Nothing in Vorthak military doctrine had prepared him for enemies who could phase in and out of normal space. His fleet was being destroyed by weapons that ignored armor and shields. His proud warships were dying like insects. In the prisoner camp, Taeho and the other colonists heard the sounds of battle in space above. Explosions lit up the sky as Vorthak ships died. The alien guards looked up in fear, their confidence suddenly gone. "What is happening?" asked the old woman beside Taeho. "I think," Taeho said slowly, "someone is coming to help us." The battle ended as suddenly as it began. Of the 312 Vorthak warships that had attacked New Hanseong, only one survived. Its captain, a young officer named Kekstar, stared at his empty sensor screens in complete shock. His entire fleet was gone, destroyed by an enemy he did not understand. "Send a message to the Empire immediately," he ordered his communications officer. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them that humans are not what we thought they were." As the lone Vorthak ship fled the system, human vessels began landing on New Hanseong. But these were not the peaceful traders that the colony usually saw. These ships carried soldiers in black armor that seemed to absorb light. They moved with perfect coordination and deadly purpose. Colonel Wu Jin led the first wave of Void Marines as they secured the prisoner camps. The Vorthak guards tried to resist, but they found themselves facing warriors who moved like shadows and fought like demons. The rescue operation was swift and efficient. Taeho watched in amazement as human soldiers freed him and the other prisoners. These warriors were nothing like the peaceful farmers and traders he had known all his life. They moved with deadly grace and showed no fear of anything. "Who are you?" Taeho asked one of the soldiers. The Marine looked at him through a helmet that hid his face. When he spoke, his voice was calm and professional. "We are the ones who come when peaceful people are threatened. We are what humans become when someone hurts our families." As medical teams treated the wounded colonists, Admiral Sung Woo's fleet took control of the system. They began hunting down every remaining Vorthak soldier and piece of equipment. Within hours, New Hansung was free, but the rescue of one colony was only the beginning. The quantum beacon that Dong Min had activated had awakened something that had been sleeping for centuries. Across human space, fleets were mobilizing. Weapons were being prepared. The peaceful farmers and traders that the galaxy knew were about to show their true nature. The Vorthak Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had attacked human civilians thinking they were weak and defenseless. Now they would learn what humans really were when someone threatened their families. The creatures they had awakened were not aliens or monsters. They were simply humans who remembered how to fight. The escape ship carrying Captain Kextar raced through space toward the Vorthak Empire's nearest military base. In the ship's databanks were recordings of the battle at New Hansung. The footage showed impossible things that no Vorthak commander would believe without seeing them. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Their weapons turned solid metal into burning gas. Their soldiers moved through Vorthak defenses as if the aliens were not even there. Everything the Empire thought they knew about humans was wrong. Kextar sat in his command chair, staring at the recordings over and over. His hands shook as he watched his entire fleet die in minutes. 300 ships reduced to nothing by an enemy that should not have been able to fight back. "Captain," said his communications officer, "we are receiving a message from Imperial Command. They want to know why we have not reported the successful conquest of the human colony." "Tell them," Kextar said quietly, "that there was no conquest. Tell them that we have awakened something terrible." When the escape ship reached the military base at Kethmor Station, Kexatar was brought immediately before Supreme War Chief Kethmor. The War Chief had been expecting a report of easy victory. Instead, he found himself looking at a terrified young captain with impossible stories. "You are telling me," Kethmor said slowly, "that a few human ships destroyed our entire fleet? That farmers and traders defeated our finest warriors?" "They were not farmers and traders," Kextar replied. "I do not know what they were, but they were not the humans our scouts reported. They fought like demons. Their ships ignored our weapons. Their soldiers seemed to enjoy killing our troops." Kethmor studied the battle recordings in disbelief. The footage showed human vessels doing things that violated everything the Vorthak knew about space combat. Ships that could appear inside enemy formations, weapons that ignored armor and shields, soldiers who moved with inhuman speed and precision. The war chief called for his best scientists and military advisors. They examined the recordings from every angle, looking for tricks or illusions, but the evidence was clear. The humans had technology and abilities that the Vorthak Empire had never encountered. On the captured Vorthak flagship above New Hansung, Dr. So Young worked with a team of human scientists to question the alien prisoners. The Vorthak soldiers were confused and frightened. They kept talking about demons and creatures that should not exist. "Tell me about the human soldiers you fought," Dr. So Young asked a captured Vorthak officer through a translation device. "They were not soldiers," the alien replied, his voice shaking. "Soldiers follow rules. Soldiers show fear. These things felt no fear. They moved like hunting animals. They seemed to enjoy the killing." Dr. So Young made notes on her data pad. The Vorthak descriptions matched what she expected. Humans in combat were very different from humans at peace. Most alien species did not understand this change. They saw farmers and traders and assumed that was all humans could be. What the aliens did not know was that every human carried the same genetic heritage. The peaceful colonists of New Hansung were descended from the same ancestors who had survived countless wars on Earth. The capacity for violence was always there, sleeping beneath the surface of civilization. Lieutenant Minho stood guard outside the interrogation room. He was a Void Marine, part of the elite forces that specialized in zero-gravity combat. His armor was black as space itself, and his weapons could function in any environment. To the Vorthak prisoners, he looked like death itself. Minho had been born on a military station far from any planet. He had been trained from childhood to fight in the darkness between stars. Combat was not just his job. It was his life. He knew no other way to exist. The lieutenant listened to the alien prisoners talk about humans as if they were monsters. He found their fear amusing. Humans were not monsters. They were simply very good at war when they needed to be. The humans fight without honor, one Vorthak prisoner complained. They use tricks and deception. They do not face us in fair combat. Minho almost laughed. The concept of fair combat was something only species who had never faced real war could believe in. Humans fought to win, not to satisfy some abstract idea of honor. In the depths of space far from any star system, Admiral Sheng Wu's main fleet was receiving new orders. The attack on New Hanxiang was not an isolated incident. The Vorthak Empire had identified human space as a target for expansion. This meant war. Sheng Wu stood in the command center of his flagship, studying tactical displays that showed the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated Vorthak military bases and fleet concentrations. Blue markers showed human colonies and trading posts. The pattern was clear. The aliens had been planning a systematic invasion. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we are receiving data from deep space intelligence operatives throughout Vorthak space. They confirm that the Empire is mobilizing for full-scale war against humanity." The Admiral nodded calmly. He had expected this. The Vorthak were a military culture that saw diplomacy as weakness. They would not stop with one failed attack. They would bring everything they had, believing that superior numbers would give them victory. "Signal all fleet commanders," Sheng Wu ordered. "Activate War Protocol Alpha. Inform them that we are no longer dealing with pirates or raiders. This is total war." Across human space, messages raced through quantum communication networks. Military bases that had appeared to be simple supply stations revealed their true purpose. Weapons factories hidden inside asteroid mining operations began producing equipment that had not been needed for 2 centuries. The human war machine was awakening, and it was vast beyond anything the Vorthak Empire could imagine. Humanity had spent decades appearing weak and peaceful, but it was all an illusion. They were a species that had perfected the art of war, and then hidden that knowledge beneath a mask of civilization. On the Vorthak homeworld, Emperor Thexkalor received the reports from Kethivor Station with growing anger. The destruction of an entire fleet was an insult that could not be tolerated. The Empire's reputation was built on military supremacy. If word spread that humans had defeated them, other species might rebel. "Mobilize the Grand Fleet," the Emperor commanded. "Gather every warship from every sector. We will show these humans what real power looks like." The Vorthak Grand Fleet was the largest military force in known space. Over 10,000 warships built for conquest and intimidation. No enemy had ever faced such power and survived. The Emperor was confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm whatever tricks the humans possessed. What Emperor Thexkalor did not understand was that humans had been preparing for this moment for generations. Every peaceful colony was connected to a military network that spanned the galaxy. Every trader and farmer could become a soldier when needed. Every ship could carry weapons that would terrify the nightmares of their enemies. Back on New Hanxiang, the colonists were learning the truth about their protectors. Taeho watched as Void Marines demonstrated their equipment and abilities. He saw armor that could survive in the vacuum of space, weapons that could cut through solid metal, and soldiers who moved with deadly precision. "This is what we really are," explained Colonel Wu Jin to a group of rescued colonists. "When humans are threatened, we become something else. We become what we need to be to protect our families." Taeho thought about his wife and children who were safe now thanks to these warriors. He began to understand that the peaceful life he had known was only possible because others were willing to fight for it. The farmers and the soldiers were all part of the same human family. Ye Jin emerged from her hiding place and revealed the truth about her work. The Agricultural Research Station had been monitoring Vorthak movements for years. Every alien ship that passed through the system had been catalogued and analyzed. The attack on New Hanxiang had not been a surprise. It had been expected. "We knew they would come eventually," Hyejin explained to the colonists. "Species like the Vorthak always do. They see peaceful people as easy targets. They do not understand that our peace comes from strength, not weakness." The truth was spreading throughout the galaxy now. The Vorthak Empire's failure at New Hanxiang was becoming known to other species. Some were pleased to see the aggressive aliens defeated. Others were terrified by the revelation of human military power. The creatures that the Vorthak could not control were not some alien horror from deep space. They were simply humans who had remembered their true nature. They were farmers who could become soldiers, traders who could become warriors, and peaceful people who could become the galaxy's most effective killers when someone threatened their families. The war was just beginning, and the Vorthak Empire was about to learn why humans had spread across the stars, despite appearing so vulnerable. They were about to discover that the most dangerous predator in the galaxy was the one that looked harmless until you made the mistake of threatening what it loved. Emperor Thexcalor stood before the assembled commanders of the Vorthak Grand Fleet. 10,000 warships filled the space around the Empire's military headquarters, the largest gathering of force in the galaxy's recorded history. The Emperor was confident that no enemy could stand against such overwhelming power. "The humans have humiliated us once," Thexcalor declared to his officers. "They used tricks and deception to defeat a single fleet, but they cannot deceive 10,000 ships. We will crush their colonies and show the galaxy that the Vorthak Empire is supreme." Fleet Admiral Yextal, who had survived the disaster at New Hansung, stood among the other commanders. He wanted to warn them about what they would face, but no one would listen. The other officers believed that humans had simply gotten lucky. They refused to accept that farmers and traders could be dangerous. What none of the Vorthak leaders knew was that their entire conversation was being monitored. Hidden among the alien crews were beings who looked like Vorthak but thought like humans. Deep Space Intelligence had placed operatives throughout the Empire's military structure years ago. Agent Namsik listened to the Emperor's war plans through audio implants that looked like normal Vorthak communication devices. He had lived among the aliens for 8 years, learning their culture and gaining their trust. Now he sent the intelligence data to human commanders who were already preparing their response. The human military structure was unlike anything the Vorthak could understand. While the aliens built massive fleets for intimidation, humans created smaller forces designed for maximum effectiveness. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was optimized for victory rather than appearance. Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo commanded the human response from his flagship Final Judgment. His fleet consisted of only 300 ships, but each vessel carried technology that the Vorthak could not comprehend. These were not the peaceful trading ships that the aliens expected to fight. Intelligence reports confirm that the Vorthak are mobilizing everything they have, reported Kyung-soo's tactical officer. 10,000 ships divided into 17 attack groups. They plan to strike at our colonies simultaneously. The Admiral studied the tactical displays showing Vorthak movements throughout the galaxy. The aliens were following predictable patterns, concentrating their forces for maximum intimidation. It was exactly what human strategists had expected them to do. "Signal all fleet elements," Kyung-soo ordered. "Execute Operation Sleeping Giant. Phase 1 begins immediately." Across human space, the real military infrastructure revealed itself. Asteroid mining stations opened to release warships that had been hidden for decades. Peaceful research outposts activated weapon systems that could destroy planets. Trading posts became communication centers coordinating the largest military operation in human history. Young Hoon stood in the recruitment center on New Hanseong, looking at the void marine uniform they had given him. 3 weeks ago, he had been a simple farmer helping his family grow food. Now he was volunteering to fight the aliens who had destroyed his home. "You do not have to do this," Colonel Woojin told him. "The war will be won by professionals. Civilians should focus on rebuilding." "They killed my neighbors," Young Hoon replied, his voice steady despite his anger. "They captured my friends. I cannot just farm while others fight for us." The colonel nodded, understanding the young man's feelings. Throughout human space, millions of colonists were making the same choice. Farmers became soldiers. Traders became warriors. Peaceful people transformed themselves into instruments of war. What the Vorthak did not understand was that this transformation was natural for humans. They were a species that had evolved as hunters and fighters. Civilization had not changed their basic nature. It had simply taught them when violence was necessary and when it was not. The first phase of Operation Sleeping Giant began with surgical strikes against Vorthak's supply lines. Human ships appeared in enemy territory without warning, destroying fuel depots and ammunition stockpiles. The attacks were swift and precise, leaving no survivors to report what had happened. General Yoon-ji led the Planetary Assault Corps in coordinated attacks on Vorthak military bases. Her forces did not fight like conventional armies. They moved like shadows, striking at weak points and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Every battle was a masterpiece of tactical planning. "The humans are using guerrilla tactics," reported a Vorthak field commander to his superiors. "They refuse to engage our main forces directly. They attack our supplies and retreat before we can retaliate." What the alien commander did not realize was that humans were not retreating. They were simply fighting the war on their own terms. Every human attack was planned to cause maximum damage with minimum risk. It was warfare refined to an art form. The Vorthak Grand Fleet finally reached human space, expecting to find terrified colonies begging for mercy. Instead, they found systems that appeared completely empty. Planets showed no signs of life. Space stations were abandoned. It was as if the humans had simply vanished. "Where are they?" demanded Fleet Admiral Kexthor, commanding the largest Vorthak battle group. "Our scouts reported millions of humans living in these systems. There should be cities, farms, industrial centers. Where is everyone?" The answer came when his fleet tried to land on what appeared to be a defenseless human world. The moment Vorthak ships entered the atmosphere, the planet revealed its true nature. Mountains opened to reveal massive weapon emplacements. Underground cities discharged swarms of fighter craft. The entire world was a fortress disguised as farmland. Admiral Seungwoo watched the battle from his command ship, orbiting the planet at a safe distance. The Vorthak had walked into a trap that had taken decades to prepare. Every human colony that appeared defenseless was actually a military stronghold, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Phase 2 is complete," reported his tactical officer. "Enemy losses are within acceptable parameters. Ready to begin Phase 3. Phase 3 was the revelation of humanity's true military capability. Ships that had been hiding in deep space revealed themselves, surrounding the Vorthak fleet. These were not the simple vessels that the aliens expected. They were weapons of war built by a species that understood destruction better than any other. The battle that followed lasted 18 hours and changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Vorthak ships that had seemed invincible were torn apart by weapons that manipulated space and time itself. Alien crews who had never known defeat found themselves facing an enemy that had perfected the art of killing. Young Hoon participated in his first combat mission during the battle, serving as a communications specialist with a Void Marine assault team. He watched through his helmet display as human soldiers moved through a captured Vorthak ship, neutralizing resistance with mechanical precision. "They fight like machines," whispered one of the captured Vorthak officers. "No emotion, no hesitation, no mercy. What kind of species creates warriors like this?" Young Hoon understood the aliens' confusion. Humans did feel emotion during combat, but they had learned to control it. Fear, anger, and hatred were tools to be used when necessary and set aside when they became hindrances. It was a level of discipline that few species could achieve. The Vorthak Grand Fleet, which had seemed so powerful at the beginning of the war, was now scattered and broken. Of 10,000 ships, fewer than 2,000 remained functional. The rest had been destroyed or captured by an enemy that had proven superior in every aspect of warfare. Emperor Thexkalor received the reports from the front lines with growing despair. Every battle ended in defeat. Every tactical advantage the Vorthak possessed was countered by human innovation. His empire, built on military strength, was being systematically dismantled by farmers and traders. "How is this possible?" the Emperor asked his advisors. "We have the largest fleet in the galaxy. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. How can we be losing to a species of peaceful colonists?" None of his advisors could answer because they did not understand the fundamental truth about humans. Peace was not their natural state. It was an achievement. They had learned to be peaceful through centuries of war. They knew the cost of violence better than any species in the galaxy, which made them more effective at it than anyone else. Dr. So Young continued her research on captured Vorthak specimens, trying to understand how their society had created such aggressive tendencies. What she found was a species that had never truly been tested. They had defeated weaker enemies and believed that made them strong. "The Vorthak are not evil," she reported to Admiral Seungwoo. "They are simply immature. They have never faced an enemy that could challenge them effectively. They do not understand that true strength comes from surviving real adversity." Humans understood adversity. They had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times throughout their history, learning from each failure. Every war had taught them new lessons about survival and victory. The peaceful colonies that the Vorthak had attacked were the result of hard-won wisdom, about when to fight and when to build. As the war entered its final phase, the truth about human nature became clear to everyone in the galaxy. They were not the weak farmers and traders that they appeared to be. They were apex predators who had learned to hide their nature until it was needed. 6 months after the first attack on New Hanseong, the Vorthak Empire no longer existed. What had once been the galaxy's most powerful military force was now scattered fragments begging for mercy from the humans they had underestimated. Emperor Thexcaler sat alone in his throne room on the Vorthak homeworld, staring at reports of surrender from across his former empire. One by one, his colonies had either been conquered by human forces or had voluntarily joined what humans called the protection zone. The speed of his empire's collapse was beyond anything he had thought possible. Your Imperial Majesty, announced a palace guard. The human ambassador has arrived for the final negotiations. Thexcaler nodded wearily. The humans had offered terms for surrender, and he had no choice but to accept them. His military was destroyed, his allies had abandoned him, and his own people were demanding peace with the terrifying species that had proven superior in every way. Ambassador Jamin entered the throne room with a small escort of human diplomats. He was a middle-aged man who looked like any other peaceful human civilian. Nothing about his appearance suggested that he represented the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. Your Imperial Majesty, Jamin said politely, bowing slightly in respect for local customs. I am here to discuss the terms of integration into human space. Integration? Thexcaler asked. You mean surrender? No, the ambassador replied calmly. Surrender implies that you have something left to give up. Integration means that you choose to join a community that will protect and prosper you. Many former Vorthak worlds have already made this choice. The Emperor looked at the treaty documents that Jamin presented. The terms were surprisingly generous for a defeated enemy. The Vorthak people would keep their homeworld and several colony systems. They would have representation in human government councils. They would be protected from external threats and given access to advanced technology. The only requirements were simple. No military forces beyond basic defense, no aggression against other species, and acceptance of human oversight until trust could be rebuilt. It was far better than Thexcaler had expected from a species he had tried to destroy. Why? The Emperor asked. Why offer mercy to an enemy who showed you none? Jamin considered the question carefully before answering. Because humans learned long ago that creating lasting peace requires wisdom, not just strength. We could destroy the Vorthak completely, but that would only create more problems in the future. It is better to turn enemies into friends. On New Hanseong, life was slowly returning to normal. The destroyed farms had been rebuilt with better technology. The captured colonists had been freed and reunited with their families. But the colony would never be the same, because now everyone understood the truth about human nature. Tae-ho worked in his fields again, but now he could see the hidden defensive positions that protected the colony. Sensors that looked like farming equipment monitored space for threats. Underground bunkers could shelter the entire population if needed. The peaceful appearance was maintained, but everyone knew it was backed by absolute force. Young-hoon had completed his training as a Void Marine and returned to visit his home. He wore civilian clothes now, but his family could see the change in him. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced death and survived. He was still their son, but he was also something more. Do you regret joining the military? His mother asked him during dinner. No, Young-hoon replied. I learned who we really are. Humans are not naturally peaceful. We choose to be peaceful because we understand the cost of war. That choice makes us stronger, not weaker. Throughout the galaxy, other species were learning this same lesson. The revelation of human military capability had changed everything. Trade relationships were renegotiated with new respect for human power. Diplomatic meetings took on different tones when everyone understood what humans could do if threatened. Captain Bora, a human intelligence officer, traveled throughout former Vorthak space documenting the changes. She visited worlds where alien populations had willingly joined human protection zones. She interviewed former enemies who had become allies. The transformation was remarkable. The Vorthak were not evil, she reported to her superiors. They were simply wrong about the nature of power. They believed that strength came from the ability to destroy. They did not understand that true strength comes from the ability to protect. On a former Vorthak military base that had been converted to a human research station, Dr. So Young continued her studies of alien psychology. Her work was helping human diplomats understand how to integrate former enemies into peaceful society. Most aggressive species are afraid, she explained in her reports. They attack others because they believe it is the only way to ensure their own survival. When humans demonstrate superior protective capability, the fear disappears and aggression becomes unnecessary. The human military had not disbanded after the war ended. If anything, their capabilities had grown stronger. But the weapons and soldiers that had terrified the Vorthak were now used for different purposes. Fleets that had destroyed enemy armies now protected trade routes. Warriors who had fought in space now trained planetary defense forces. Admiral Xiong Wu had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces. His job was to ensure that the galaxy remained peaceful, which meant being prepared for war while hoping it would never come. The greatest victory, he often told his officers, is the war that never has to be fought. We are strong so that others can be weak. We are prepared for violence so that others can live in peace. This philosophy was spreading throughout human space and beyond. Species that had once competed for resources now cooperated under human protection. Trade flourished because everyone knew that pirates and raiders would face swift and decisive retaliation. The galaxy was more peaceful than it had been in centuries. But this peace was built on a foundation of demonstrated strength. Everyone understood that attacking human civilians would result in consequences that no military force could survive. Hyejin had returned to her agricultural research, but her work now included developing food sources for the many alien species that had joined human space. Her laboratory was no longer a hidden intelligence post. It was exactly what it appeared to be. The deception was no longer necessary because the truth had been revealed. The war taught us something important, she explained to visiting scientists from other worlds. Humans are capable of both creation and destruction. We choose creation whenever possible, but we never forget how to destroy when necessary. Young alien students came to human colonies to learn about agriculture, technology, and philosophy. They learned that humans had not conquered the galaxy through superior firepower, but through superior understanding of when force was necessary and when it was not. Taeho sometimes gave tours to these students, showing them the farms that fed millions of beings across dozens of worlds. The students were always surprised to learn that the peaceful farmer had also served as a volunteer soldier during the war. "Are you not afraid to live without weapons?" asked a young Vorthak student. "We are surrounded by weapons," Taeho replied, gesturing to the hidden defenses that protected the colony. "But more importantly, we are surrounded by people who know how to use them. True security comes not from carrying weapons, but from knowing that others will protect you if needed." The lesson was spreading throughout the galaxy. Species that had spent centuries building armies were learning to build societies instead. Wars became rare because everyone understood that humans would intervene to protect the innocent, and no one wanted to face human intervention. Ambassador Jamin established the first Galactic Peace Council, with representatives from hundreds of worlds. The council's purpose was to resolve conflicts through diplomacy rather than warfare. Its authority came from the quiet understanding that humans would enforce its decisions if necessary. "Peace is not the absence of conflict," Jamin explained to the assembled delegates. "Peace is the presence of justice. When justice exists, conflict becomes unnecessary." Emperor Thexcalor, now serving as the Vorthak representative on the Peace Council, had learned this lesson well. His people were prospering under human protection in ways they never had under their own military rule. They were building cities instead of warships, creating art instead of weapons. The creatures that the Vorthak had been unable to control had indeed changed the galaxy, but not through conquest or destruction. They had changed it by demonstrating that the strongest beings could choose to be gentle, and that the most dangerous warriors could choose to be protectors. The galaxy learned that humans were not the peaceful farmers and traders they appeared to be. They were apex predators who had evolved beyond the need for constant aggression. They were beings who understood that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy enemies, but in the wisdom to turn enemies into friends. And in the end, that wisdom proved more powerful than any weapon, creating a peace that would last for generations because it was built on understanding rather than fear. The creatures that could not be controlled had chosen not to conquer the galaxy, but to teach it a better way to live.